All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Nobody's Talking podcast. We are back together for the first time in 8 weeks. We were in different locations doing different rotations. It's pretty cool to be back together with the gang. If you are watching us on YouTube, clearly you can see all of us. And our incredible guest for today, Dustin Jones, a.k.a. the Senior Rehab Specialist.
Man.
Dustin, welcome so much to the show.
Thank you all for having me on. It's a pleasure. It's been a long day, and I've been really looking forward to this talk and to have this beer with you all. So
cheers.
I'll give it a good old cheers.
Indeed. Cheers, bud.
Dustin, what are you drinking?
So this is a West 6 brewery in Lexington, Kentucky. They have an IPA that I could drink every day if that was a healthy thing to do. But
as long as it's after clinic hours.
Right.
We are drinking some Sweetwater Extra Pale Ale 420.
Yeah, from Georgia, not from around here in Pittsburgh. I don't want to have an icy light on camera.
Oh, icy light. That brings up so many bad
I know, no incriminating evidence.
Probably frat house. Yeah.
Yep.
For anyone out there who doesn't know Dustin, Dustin is the host of the Senior Rehab Podcast with one of the most clever slogans, I think, old does not equal weak. And we are incredibly happy to have him on here. Later when we wrap up, we'll talk about in the show notes all the links to his websites and how to follow him on Twitter. But I think we just kind of want to dive right in, if you're all right with that, Dustin, kind of start out. Really just having you tell us a little bit about, one, where you're from, kind of your background, and then two, what got you into the geriatric field, working with older adults?
All right. I'll try and keep it as succinct as possible, but I think there's some critical points in the career, mainly failures that, especially, in school, y'all can learn from. So I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia. So I was big into sports, and then went to college and, was into sports as well. I did athletic training in undergrad. So had a lot of great experience there. And for most athletic trainers, they end up going to physical therapy school. It's just what you do. So I just kind of blindly went to Kentucky. And it was a great experience. The first year was awesome because a lot of it was kind of review just from the athletic training undergrad. So that was really encouraging. But what happened with that is I felt like I got a little too big for my britches, if you've heard that term before. I felt like I knew a lot. I was doing good on tests. I was really confident. And that came to bite me in my ears afterwards. So I graduated from PT school, complicated situation. My wife was in medical school. So I went out there with her where she was my girlfriend at the time. Took an outpatient job. I had, the PT, DPT, ATC, CSCS after my name. I thought, I was a big shot. Like I was doing that clinic a favor for hiring me. I ended up getting fired within a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So that humbled me tremendously, and I needed it, honestly. And from there, my former employer actually gave me recommendations on what to do next. And one of them was a contract skilled nursing facility position in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. And out of necessity, I took it. And for me, that was a really big low point, because I don't know, how you all feel, but at that point, when I thought of skilled nursing facility or geriatrics, I thought, there goes my career. I'm at the bottom rung of the ladder. It's over. And I went and ended up just falling in love with it, and was just really surprised. That contract ended, and I went to Columbus with my wife and decided, hey, I'm going to try and do home health kind of on the side. And as I spent more time, I really, really enjoyed it. And then, I just fully committed to it. So yeah, former sports junkie, ortho PT turned home health PT advocate. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Wow. Well, Dustin, maybe you can walk us through then. I mean, coming in with the certified strength and conditioning coach specialty, obviously the athletic trainer background, you're used to working with these athletes. You had this change in in location. You're now working at the skilled nursing facility, working obviously with an elder population. How did that really sink in? You said, how am I going to take my knowledge? I mean, you're a hotshot. You had all these certifications. How did you really start applying it to a starkly different population right off the bat?
Yeah, it was solely out of ignorance. So all I knew was kind of the higher level athletes or adults, and the interventions that would be appropriate for that population. And I just applied that in the skilled nursing facility, and I would scale it, but I wasn't very thoughtful, or I just did what I normally knew how to do in the outpatient clinic. And so what I found was that, a lot of people, respond really well to the higher intensity therapy or activity that I was providing compared to a lot of the stuff that they were receiving. And not to hate on other therapists, but I mean, have you all spent any time in a skilled nursing facility yet, or anything along those lines?
Got done an 8-week rotation in one, and much like yourself, I think I went into it with an expectation that my expertise and background of exercise wasn't going to be utilized, and it was an opportunity to really flourish. I think it kind of it turned it on for me. Yeah,
it is a good opportunity. But I know for me, I've been in a few places now. What you'll commonly see is just kind of generic, seated TheraX with TheraBand and just walking. And I'm not saying that stuff is bad, but if it's not dosed appropriately, it honestly, it could be seen as a waste of time for some people. So I think I just went in ignorantly and, got some good results, and was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then along the way, you learn, how to make things safer and to dose a little better. So yeah, that was kind of that transition for me.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned too that you came in kind of ignorant to the process, because as a student, when you think about the geriatric training, you come in maybe with this preconceived notion that you start by training the elder individual and then maybe you build them up. But it sounds like you came in like, all right, guys, you're all athletes. You might be, older aged athletes, you're past your prime, but in terms of getting on the field, but I'm going to treat you like you can do anything. I'm sure more than just exercise protocol, it also comes off in your language, right? I mean, how you talk to someone, how you motivate them to get involved. Maybe you can share an experience where someone really, responded well to your particular brand of training.
That is true. One thing that comes to mind is we, especially if you have like that outpatient ortho mindset, like you're getting people back to their job, to the playing field, like they are going to get out of your clinic. And that was my mindset going into the nursing home. But I didn't realize that for people that have worked in that setting for years or decades, a lot of them don't think like that, just because most people don't, get out of the nursing home. That's kind of where they stay, and they'll go through these rounds of rehab. And I mean, I can't blame the therapist for kind of losing hope in their patients improving, because a lot of people don't improve the way that you would want them to. But I had I didn't have that mindset. I was in the outpatient ortho mindset, like, okay, let's get after it. We're going to reach your goals. We're going to get, back to home if you want to, or be able to walk to the cafeteria. And like I said before, it is ignorance, but some people, that were motivated really responded well. A particular patient story, I think it was just, there was this lady, she was, I think, late 80s, that had not walked in who knows how long. And I had her on my caseload, and I think it was just that I had some hope for her, and she saw that, and she was, working with me and trying hard. And we were leaving the therapy gym, we were going to lunch, and she saw her granddaughter come in the door, and it was a really long hallway. And she said, stop the wheelchair. And we stopped it, put the brakes on, and it was like a Rocky moment, man. It was just amazing. Like all time stop. I put the walker in front of her, and she just boom comes right up out of the wheelchair. And she only took like 3 or 4 steps, but that was just really cool to see. And I'm just really thankful, for her trying hard. But I really think that, I mean, we have such a big impact if we believe in them especially in that skilled nursing facility setting, or just geriatrics in general. I mean, the impact that can have on their lives is huge, because a lot of times they don't get that. It's like, okay, this is kind of how things go, and it's just going to get worse from here, and suck it up. But we can provide a little glimpse of hope in that situation. So
I think I think that's incredible, because before I got into PT school, and especially understanding the principles of strengthening, how do you explain to someone? I'm picturing myself taking my mom or my grandmother in to see a physical therapist, and the thought of them like picking up a barbell to do a deadlift, probably 5 years ago, I probably would have thought like, why are you trying to break my mom or grandmother's back? Right? Like, that's the picture I have of them just like crumbling, or, sorry, mom, if you're listening, I know you're stronger than that. But having this sense of, I feel like that might be intimidating for the everyday person who doesn't really have that understanding of the strength background, right? We all understand you need a certain amount of strength to climb a stair, to walk, but really true strengthening. I guess one, what do you say to someone? How do you approach like a family that strengthening is good? Then how do you work with these clients and patients saying, we're actually we're going to do like Olympic lift style stuff. We're going to actually push some weights around. It doesn't have to be language, just kind of curious, like your mindset of going through that conversation and why that's important to you to have those types of exercises.
Yeah. So I think, first off, everything starts with a conversation. You all know that, but I just really gauge, what are the person's beliefs? Are they open to new things? Are they interested in those types of things? Cause I don't do that stuff with everybody. Yeah. I would love to. I mean, there's lots of things I would love to do for the patient, but they don't want it. And so, I mean, as hard as I can try for them to do it, yes, they may do it while I'm there for the session, but when I leave, I mean, it's right back to what they feel comfortable with. So I think gauging their readiness to change or to try something new is one thing. And if they are wanting, if they trust in me and want to try new things, then I just try and really scale it and break things down. So I remember when I started home health, I mean, on day one, sometimes I would bring in, an 8-pound kettlebell, and some of these women like, is that a bowling ball with ears? Yeah, they just had no idea, or they were scared to death of it. Like, no, you're not bringing that in here. So just saying, oh my gosh, like I can't just be pushing this stuff on these people. I have to build the trust, get them to believe in what I can do as a therapist, and then gently introduce these things. So, maybe like, and I think the videos that we're seeing now is can really speak to this. You see, grandmas deadlifting 200 and some pounds, these viral videos going on Facebook at least every week. Mm-hmm. You see that video, but what you don't see is the probably years of preparation to get to that point. And, all these people take that gradual process. And I view it the same way. I'm not going to go straight to a deadlift. I'm not going to go straight to a weighted squat. We'll work on a sit to stand. We'll work on, just shifting your weight and standing before you even try and, go all the way down to the ground to pick something up. So it's just using your PT mind to break those movements down into non-threatening parts. And as they build their trust, as they build their physical ability, then you just start to increase the complexity to the point where, they're, doing a goblet squat with 25-pound kettlebell. So but it takes a long time. That's the tough thing too. Especially in outpatient when, you only have X amount of visits. But for home health, I've been able to have a lot of time with people to build that up. So.
Dustin, you give us some great insight as to what it is you do and the approach, the how you do it. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you could touch a little bit now on why it's important, mm-hmm. what it is that makes you wake up before you start work every day and say, well, I got to do this because, finish that sentence for me. I feel like that's a pretty big picture that a lot of people might not understand.
Yeah. Good question. I think from the physical therapist standpoint, my past experiences have influenced me tremendously. So being fired, being in, a couple nursing homes, doing home health, and just kind of, as I progress in my career and see more people and see more patients and hear their stories, the state of affairs in geriatric rehab is I wouldn't say pitiful, but we can improve a lot. So I think about that. I think about the patients where I ask them, have you had physical therapy before? And they said, yeah, I just sat in a chair and did some stretchy bang kicks and walked for 10 feet. And, like, are you serious? Like that's not therapy. And just thinking like how much we are leaving on the table for these older adults to live a full life, to be able to stay at home or to be able to be a part of their families' lives. Like, I just think that's huge. I mean, yeah, like I have family as well. Like my grandmother, I think about her. What if she needed therapy? What would I want that therapist to do? But I mean, after you just talk to so many people, especially like in the geriatric settings, you're like, we can do so much better. And so that just motivates me to do what I can with my patients, but then, just have these conversations with people like you just to get this into the limelight. 'Cause geriatrics isn't always talked about. So that was a rambling answer. Sorry.
No. And I'm thinking more, you touched a little bit on the patient or the geriatric perspective. Why is it important not to just kind of picture them and say, well, you're losing your balance, so here's a walker. And then when they can't use the walker anymore, well, maybe you just shouldn't get up as much. Try sitting down more during the day. Why is it important? I don't want you to get too much into the evidence, but why just from your understanding, is it important for them to participate in activities and exercises that you're giving them?
Yeah. I mean, I've struggled with this actually, because I started off as, trying to not use the walker as much as possible and trying to stay away from the raised toilet seat as much as possible. 'Cause I think that was more that ortho outpatient mindset. But now, I'm probably a little bit quicker to recommend some of those things. So it's this delicate balance of, I view it as kind of being able to participate in the things that you want to be able to do. Whether, it's to be interactive in the community or with your family, or to be able to go to the toilet or get off the toilet on your own. All those different things that, they can just make their life full and for them to participate. But then again, it's like this fine balance of that walker could help them participate in a safe manner so they don't fall and break their hip. So it's this fine line. So I definitely err towards, want them to be as independent as possible and not use as much medical equipment or assistive devices if they don't have to. But then there is that fine line of safety, which honestly, I feel like it's just a judgment call by the therapist that, I don't know, I still feel uneasy making that call. But hopefully with time, it'll get a little easier. But
well, I'm glad you bring that up, Dustin, pardon me, because I think when you consider maybe from the outside in training or therapy exercise for the older adult, it might seem limited. It's very easy to look at it and you say, well, you're having issues with balance, so let's try to supplement your balance with an assistive device, a cane or a walker, and then exercise from there becomes more and more, right, within a smaller scope. I guess I would like to ask you, when you talk about this fine line of exercise, and would you rather push them to try to expand, become a little more quick with their movements, a little more ballistic? I mentioned you heard say the kettlebell before, which is a huge part of my training philosophy. I love the kettlebell. But you also mentioned, the raised toilet seats and the slow moving and getting to that deeper squat, some of the movements that are, I think, more commonly associated with growing older and having, safe transitions into a squat, the sit to stand. So putting these two pieces of the puzzle together, the slow, controlled movements, things that we've said to maybe the elderly patient 100,000 times, saying it's on slow. But on the other hand, we know that they're losing these fast twitch muscle fibers just as a result of aging. So should we be training them to be performing exercises a little bit more ballistically to preserve that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. And there's a lot of really, really interesting research to prove that. And in terms of the kind of the TheraX muscle response to that type of training, but also just reaction times. So one really cool thing that I haven't got to do much myself, but just see other people doing is even tripping people. in a controlled environment, which just like those quick movements that older adults don't do often unless it is a fall that's going to lead to an injury. But they're starting to train those quicker movements because their movement does slow down tremendously as they age. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think training quicker in a controlled manner, a safe manner, with supervision is super beneficial. That, honestly will impact how quickly they move, but then will just translate into so many, other areas of their life, just movement in general. So,
yeah. So let me follow that up then with maybe the more traditional physical therapy approach is you really emphasize the slower movements, controlled movements, because it's easy to trust the patient to do it correctly when you're not around. Ideally, you say, here's the home exercise program. I'd like you to do sit to stand at home, get out of your chair, practice getting back in as slow as you can, really challenge these muscles to not lose your balance or not fall into the chair, correct? Whereas, right, and maybe it's just my lack of experience with this population, I'd feel less confident saying, hey, you looked very good with the kettlebell today. We did a few, safe lifts from the ground, maybe a few controlled swings or a more ballistic exercise. Make sure you're doing it right at home and just check in next week. Where's yourself? Yeah. Thoroughly try not to trip at home. Where do you fall in this, in this delineation, where do you trust the patient when you're not with them?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'm still trying to figure it out, honestly. When you ask that, the first thing that I think of is there's a lot on the line for a lot of people, which I know for me, it's hard for me to put myself in their shoes. So, I mean, I just try and think that you're 80, 90 some years old. You may still have, a spouse, or they may have passed away. You may or may have family around. You're probably in a house that you've lived in for 30 or 40 years, of your life. It's all you know. And you're kind of on this line of, you're in your home and it's okay. You're still functioning. You're able to feed yourself and use the bathroom. But if something goes wrong, you're easily going to the hospital. And we all know that, hospital trips, a lot of people get better, but then they can cause a lot of complications as well. So it's like, I don't know, it's like an outpatient, if you do something or you recommend something that hurts someone, like, yes, that's not a good thing, but more than likely they're going to bounce right back. In the geriatric population, not so much. And so in that regard, I found myself erring more on the side of caution, especially with unsupervised activity, just because the risks for me are not worth the rewards, honestly, especially if like someone's in their home. Cause that is the worst thing. I can't imagine what it's like to be ripped out of your home, after that's all and then you're in a skilled nursing facility or whatever facility. So yeah, I'm more cautious. Other people probably disagree. But I'm trying to, I guess, cover my butt a little bit with that, and hopefully serve the patient well. So
what would, I think that's such a great point. And what's interesting is to have someone who does this on a daily basis and still have that difficulty making those judgments. And that just goes to show that's nothing about, your experience level. It just goes to show how difficult it is to make those decisions, right? You're essentially in a position to possibly uproot someone from their home or their livelihood. And you don't take that lightly. That's not something that's black and white of, you can't do X, therefore you need to leave your house.
Right.
Something much more dynamic and complicated than that. I was going to ask you, just maybe some things that I think might be helpful for the general public. If, say, for example, I'm, my age or a little bit older and I'm taking care of my mom or dad, and they're having a hard time getting up. They're not really as mobile as they used to be. I notice they're losing their balance, but I don't really know. I'm not really aware of what my resources are. Maybe if you could fill us in on some things that you think are key signs for people to keep an eye out for family members, and that things that might be corrected or at least improved through something like physical therapy or some type of training, balance training, strength training, wherever they want to go. And then, some things that you maybe a story or an anecdote that you could mention of how you've seen someone change even in their older age. I think sometimes I hear from older patients like, you know, I'm 85. I'm good. Let me sit here. This is where I made it. And a part of me wants to accept that and say, you know, you lived that long. But a part of me is like, well, would you like to have 6-7 more years of really good, you know, mobility? And I went off on a tangent, but I'll answer those two questions, I guess, for the general public. Someone taking care of their parent, you know, some signs to look for, and you know, and then why they might be appropriate for, say, something like physical therapy, and then maybe a success story.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, say, like with my parents. I would encourage people that are maybe caring for their parents or will be in the near future to not wait until they see a sign or symptom. So, especially, I mean, fitness is a big thing. I mean, the industry is huge. Everyone is, you know, working out, and that is making its way up into, you know, the geriatric population, but it's not the norm by any means. But I mean, it's amazing to see how especially the older adult population will benefit from regular exercise. I mean, sometimes exponentially more than, you know, say if like you and I, you know, just went to the gym. And so I'm just a big proponent of just a regular physical activity regimen, whatever it is. I used to be all about, you know, lift heavy things and kettlebells and barbells and all that stuff. That stuff is amazing, and I think it's super effective. But I mean, even if it's walking, even if it's just something that person enjoys, just get them moving as much as possible. But, you know, try and nudge them in the way to where they are strength training, because that is not normal for that population for sure. So I would say I would encourage the person just to be just very, very prophylactic in how they deal with that, for sure. But and then I would also, I mean, this is something I'm going through, thinking about the environment that the person is in. Like for example, my parents are in this split level house. It's like 3 floors. The kitchen is completely separate from, say, like the bathroom, which is upstairs, and there's another one downstairs, and the bedroom is upstairs. So this like split level homes make it super tough for people to get around. So the earlier that they can think about the environment, the better, because it's really hard to make a change. And with those things, you know, when something happens or there's a fall or whatnot, as compared to, you know, years before, you know, a real stressful time. So.
Well, I don't want to make a plug for PT, but it sounds like if you can't just uproot and change the environment, you have to be able to adapt.
Yep.
What do you recommend for the person that's willing to try that to become more adaptable? I mean, what do they need to do?
So for me, because I mean, I'm just thinking like with my parents.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with like sending them to a YouTube video or you know, blog post or an amazing video that Ryan Smith puts up on Instagram, even though they are amazing. But I just won't do it because they're not used to doing those things. You know, like for us, a squat and a deadlift is like second nature at this point. But for a lot of them, they don't practice those movements mindfully. I'm just speaking for the people that I've come across. Yeah. So I would definitely seek a professional that knows their stuff, that works with that population. But the tough thing is you don't really find a lot that make themselves known on the internet. So that's something I'm dealing with right now, because my mom's wanting to start to work out more. She's 2 hours away. I have no clue who I can send or can refer her to. I don't think I can trust very many people. So I would seek a professional, but you got to do your vetting for sure. See, you know, what populations do they work with, and see if they're active themselves, and go from there. But I don't have a better answer because I'm struggling with the same question. If we had more people like Christina Novak from staveoff.ca, this world would be a better place, because she would be a great first contact. But people like her are few and far between in terms of the PT world.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up, you wouldn't send them to a YouTube video, because it's funny. I mean, we are a generation where if I wanted to learn how to do just about anything, I'd YouTube it, right? If I needed to replace a part of my car, I'd YouTube it. If I likewise needed to work on a part of my body, I could also YouTube it and I think anyone, we'll say layman's terms, could figure out what they need to do in the general sense, maybe without going and seeking out the professional. But that resource might not be available seeking out a personal trainer or a physical therapist to every aging individual, whereas they might not even understand that some of their function is declining, some of their athletic ability is declining. We've had this conversation with people on the show before, that the community aspect of therapy is really, I think, what makes it so powerful in a lot of ways, whether it's group therapy in the physical therapy sense, or maybe for Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis support group that participates in group exercise, because it gives you purpose and has structure and has that specialist that you mentioned before. They've sought out a professional. Yourself, maybe personal experience, where do you find that yourself as a conduit for helping patients that are maybe at the higher level of function, albeit elderly or a little bit older, saying, I think I can handle a little bit more? Maybe, is there a group class I can attend? Is there a resource I can reach out to that isn't a www? Because that just doesn't really coincide well with that generation.
Yeah. So sorry, just to clarify the question. So
well, I guess I could be candid. I got pretty excited there when I was talking about it. Is how do you find yourself directing a lot of your patients to resources in your community, saying, hey, there's someone that I know of, that I trust, an exercise professional or therapist that's running a course that I think would be appropriate for you?
Yeah. So I previously lived in Columbus, Ohio, and I had built relationships with people that I trusted. So they were personal trainers. I worked for one. That's how I got on the kettlebells. She owns a kettlebell gym, and that was really helpful, because there were people that I would interact with. Some were patients, some were not. That I knew I could send them that way, and they were very receptive to it. So I think it's vital that we're active in the community, even in the fitness community, but branching out of our little PT bubble and making relationships. It doesn't happen naturally by any means. You got to be proactive for sure. But that can definitely expand your network to be able to refer to appropriate services, which my network here in Kentucky is pretty small right now. So I should probably practice what I preach and get on that. But I yearn for the day where we have these databases of these certified, personal trainers that are, geriatric trained, but then have that mentality of knowing how to appropriately dose strength training and do some of these kind of high, you get a lot of bang for your buck movements, which I haven't found that yet. It may be out there, but I haven't found it yet. So.
All right. Well, I mean, just to reiterate that, it sounds like it's really up to, we always go back to the physical therapist because that's where we have our experience. Certainly you do as well, that it's up to the physical therapist to create these links in the health and wellness network. If you want to give the best patient care, you have to be a resource to help someone get in connection with someone that you trust. I was just curious if you had known any, whether it was easier to access web resources or community resources, national programs that help try to get older populations moving again, because I'm not familiar with too many, even within the personal training network.
Besides the Senior Rehab podcast.
Beside the Senior Rehab podcast. About it.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the biggest resources were, because I did home health. They were my coworkers, especially social work and just occupational therapists and nurses. I mean, when you're out in home health, you get connected with all kinds of different resources that are available. So the coworkers were super helpful, but almost every area has, I'm going to look this up real quick. It's like the area agency on aging.
That's
AAA.
Let me double check.
AAA, like the auto insurance?
Yeah, is that what I heard?
Exactly. So each region will have them, and that was my go-to source. Just they know everything, every service that is available. And there are a lot of services available, and it can be overwhelming for patients and caregivers as well. But those agencies are just super connected. Give them a call, and that they can solve most problems in terms of aging. Honestly, they're really helpful, whether you're a PT or not. So
yeah, we'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, we just got to get a concrete, we'll do a little investigative research ourselves.
Yeah.
What's around, at least in the Pittsburgh area. That's where we've been most linked in.
Yeah.
I think it's the Yinzer's Agency on Aging.
Yeah.
Did I see? Oh, sorry. Allegheny County Area Agency on Aging, I believe.
Okay. We'll have to look it up. Well, if anyone doesn't know Pittsburgh, is
It's y'all.
It's y'all. It's the equivalent of y'all. It's
more fun than y'all.
Yeah.
I didn't like.
Oh, come on.
I dealt with y'all for so long, and I couldn't catch on. Yet, at least funny. I can laugh at it.
Nick went to college in North Carolina, so he's got the y'all. He's working on the y'all. I want to ask you, speaking of y'all, you live in Kentucky now. You grew up in North Carolina or in West Virginia, which I don't know. Is West Virginia a y'all state?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did,
okay.
for sure.
Y'all want to be. It's kind of like close enough where nobody will make a deal.
Yeah, it depends. The closer you get to Pittsburgh, the less y'alls you'll hear. But where I'm from, Southern West Virginia, you get your y'alls for sure.
Well, that region, as well as where we're living in Pittsburgh, and I think a lot of the Midwest is notorious for our epidemic of obesity and being overweight as a population in general. I was kind of curious what you think, and nothing specific, just your opinions on where we're moving forward with an older population of keeping them healthy from a nutrition standpoint. So not necessarily, obviously strength and keeping moving, exercising is going to do wonders for the cardiovascular system, building up our musculoskeletal endurance. What do you see just in your own experience and practice from the nutrition side of things? It's something that I see with my own experience of, I have family members who are really active, friends who are really active, but they can't seem to balance out that nutrition side of things. And it's not always easy at, say, 85 to say, time to change your diet. So I'm curious how that plays a role in your work.
To be honest, it doesn't, in the sense it influences my work, but I don't address it much because there's so many people involved in the care of the patients that I treat to where it's kind of out of my scope. But it is something that I was more passionate about it, and I kind of became defeated after I started working.
Yeah.
But people,
which I think is important too. I think it's important to kind of have that anecdote of someone who's even passionate. What are some of the barriers you find? What led to being defeated? What are some things in your opinion you think, I didn't mean to cut you off, some things that you think
no, you're good.
we could do to combat it, just in your opinion, nothing doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Well, it's the barriers question. So the barriers were very overwhelming to me because, it's just such a complex topic that I don't feel qualified to talk about, but just like the pricing of food, that's especially for most older adults, like they're on this fixed income to where, you could tell them all the right things to eat and give them all the knowledge. But when it comes down to it, if they can get, 500 calories for $5 as compared to 20, they're going to go the cheaper route every time. So that's a big topic, but our unhealthiest food is the cheapest. So so that's what, usually ends up being in the kitchens as well. I think another big thing too, which we're starting to see change, and I want to mention he was a former boss. I worked at a running shoe store in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia, and he's a primary care physician that started a running store, Mark Cucuzella. He's done some clinics up your all's way in Pittsburgh, some running clinics. But he's doing some inpatient work now, and he is, treating people through their diet while they're inpatient. And to see just some of the medications that some of these patients are able to go off of are absolutely incredible. So say like someone is in there, they have diabetes, he'll do, carb restriction, bump up, good fat intake. And, I mean, it's insane to see some of the results that he's getting inpatient. And then he's really creating a community to where that is, people are practicing that more and more, out in the community. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling. So I think of him when I am defeated, because he is working within the constraints of that medical model, using his expertise, saying, I know this is good for the patient, being able to demonstrate it, and he's getting awesome results. But it's so much more complex, especially like for me in home health. Like I'm not able to control those variables as much because people are in their home.
Well, I think I really appreciate your perspective on that, because you're someone who has a firsthand look inside people's homes, probably not eating dinner with them all the time, but, you get to see sort of what's in their cupboards. And I think it's just an interesting perspective, because I think it's a huge barrier to exercise, to wanting to exercise, to be willing to exercise, knowing, the things we put in our body. And I mean, I just think about now, if you had to give me 60 pounds of extra weight to carry with me everywhere I go, I could, that would be more burdensome and probably I'd be less likely to want to stand up. So I think it's really interesting to get that perspective. So I appreciate giving a stab at what you see. And there's no perfect answer. I think that's what we're kind of having these conversations, try to figure out, maybe where do we start from? So. Yeah.
And I appreciate people like Mike Eisenhart that y'all had on. I mean, he reminds me a lot of Mark Cucuzella. Just, they're just getting after it. He knows what he believes, and he's going to make it happen. And he's getting, awesome results in his work. And I admire those people, because I got so defeated when I got out of PT school, because I idealized this. Oh, if I get them to do these things and tell them these things, and everything's going to be okay, they're going to lose weight and be active, and it's just not that easy. But so I want to add something though. When you mentioned the obesity, epidemic, and especially in this region, nutrition's a big thing. But Chris Hines has got me thinking a lot about our environment. I traveled this summer a good bit in Europe for the first time. I've never been over there, and it was absolutely amazing to be in a place in cities that were built for people and not necessarily automobiles. And I just I literally walked like 8 to 9 miles a day without even thinking about it. And I had a pretty steady fitness regimen before I went on that trip. And then I found that for the most part, I didn't need or necessarily want to work out per se. I was just walking for 8 to 9 miles. I know, you can't develop strength per se by walking a lot, but it really had me thinking once I got back home, especially like Southern West Virginia, the terrain is very difficult. Even the little towns are built for cars. It's tough for older adults to even get out of their house, just how they are built. So I'm thinking more and more, especially for our geriatric population, what can we do to manipulate the environment to where it is easy to move? It is an easy choice to walk in a safe manner, that they're not going to be afraid that they're going to fall inside or outside their home. So Chris Hines, I mean, he's definitely leading the way on that in the PT world. And I think that's going to have big implications going forward for kind of us as a society, for sure.
And Dustin, you had touched on it before Will had brought it up, that whether it's, body composition, and, certainly there are certain regions of the U.S. that are, overweight in dealing with this issue. But as getting back to our main topic of an aging population, it's no surprise that we're going to deal with a generation, the largest generation perhaps, getting into this elderly age range, needing rehab services, needing physical therapy and exercise, I should say. Moving forward, where would you like to see healthcare for the geriatric population go? In terms of right now, it's really based on, hey, I mean, you can be overweight, you can eat any way and exercise at any level you'd like until something goes wrong. And then let me go off to physical therapy. They're going to teach you how to move. Where would you ideally love to, if you could start right now, you were the zealot that started it all, how would you be a little more proactive, in saying, hey, let's stop these things, nip them in the bud. You know, you mentioned changing the community, which would be great. Maybe within physical therapy alone, what would you like to do to be a little more progressive?
Okay. I think the first thing is regular contact with your physical therapist. So just kind of the checkup model, to encourage patients to, to be active, to make sure that they're staying on top of any issues that could appear, to make sure their pain, is low or not present at all. So I think kind of adopting that kind of dentist model, with physical therapy, I think that would be super valuable for our older adult population, especially with the medical management side of things, or disease management, I should say. I also would love to like take CrossFit, for example. I don't do CrossFit per se, but we all have our critiques of it, but I love you mentioned the communal aspect of it and just how it really draws people in. It creates a family to where people are held accountable. A lot of them are consistent, and they enjoy it. A lot of people do. And I love that kind of communal based model. And someone like I mentioned, Christina Novak before, staveoff.ca, she is doing that with the older adult population. So I think that is something that I would love to see more of. And then lastly, this is kind of out of our sphere, but just kind of that environmental aspect. Just to look at our environment, how can we get people moving safely? I think that's that's the biggest issue for older adults. Like, we can engineer environments that are movement friendly for people like you and me, but something that is easy for you and me could be absolutely terrifying for an older adult. And so to think in that perspective, I think would be pretty awesome. But still, part of me is not content with that. I feel like that's still kind of in my box framework. I think we need someone like Mike Eisenhart to come and just drop a knowledge bomb on us. But I think that would be my answer.
It's easy to admire Mike because he talks a lot about, PT. Everyone should have a personal PT. Mm-hmm. And way before you hurt yourself, your employer should be thinking about getting you a personal PT. So right. That as you get hired, someone comes up and goes, here's the thing. You're going to be very physical in your job. Here's what you should expect. Here's how we prepare you. And I like the point you've made about creating an environment that's a little more adaptable, right, to the active elderly population. And I'm picturing it in my head like a facility that someone could. I feel like there's a void out there for someone to create I hate to say the equivalent of a children's park, but it's an area it's funded and purposed for exercise and outreach and a community base for older individuals. And I think who knows where it would start, if it would begin at the city level or if the APTA would jump behind it and create these things nationwide. But it's really an intriguing thought.
Let's get useful doing geriatric parkour.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I was about to mention him because he, the guy knows his parks. He spent lots of time in them, but the whole park design world fascinates me. Just all the elements that go into it and how you can make a really good park for one group of people, but completely isolate another group of people. And the really good parks are the ones, for me, it's what I look for is if the parent is playing with the kid. And I know there's lots of factors go into that, but a lot of times it's just the equipment and the spacing in and of itself. So if I see parents playing with their kids like that, that's a good park. And I think what factors, what variables can we manipulate to allow the kid to play and then their parent and then even their grandparent all moving all safely. I don't know what that looks like. I just threw that out there, but
what a cool picture too of, watching a young child model his parent and or grandparent, exercising. And we've done several podcasts on the idea of play. Eric wrote a great piece in a blog post about, how we should get back to playing even as older adults and how the power of that keeps both your mind and your body young. So I think that's a great perspective. Dustin, we want to say thank you so much for the time to take time out of your day to talk with us. I think something that I would like to start asking all of our guests at the end is to get back to our roots. What has living a healthy, fit, active life meant to you, and why is it important to you?
What has it meant to me? I think right now, and I think this will change as time goes. I'm 30 years old right now. Having health has allowed for me to have some of the most amazing experiences that I can imagine, in terms of like places that you can go, things that you can see. Just to where your feet can take you in this world is pretty wild. So I think that is, for me, that is what I'm really thankful for when I think of like health in general. What was the second part to that question?
And what, I guess, what has it meant to you? And then, why does it help you? Why is it important to you?
Yeah. So the why, I think, just being able to participate, just whether, it is, hiking up to a mountain or going to see something beautiful, but just to be able to participate in the life of the community and the life of my family, my friends, just to be useful. I want to be able to be that grandpa that, can help my son move out of his house or play with his grandkid on the playground. Like I think of those things when I train, or when, I think of if I should make a healthy decision or an unhealthy decision. Yeah. So yeah, there's my answer.
That's awesome. Well, we're incredibly grateful to have you on this episode and to be a part of the show and to be part of a community that's just doing positive things. We really can't thank you enough. Dustin, do you mind telling people where they can find you at on social media, and also a little about the SeniorRehabProject.com? Kind of give yourself a little plug with that stuff.
All right. Well, thank you all. Let's do another cheers if y'all haven't.
Hey, cheers to failure leading to success.
Exactly. My gosh. Story of my life. I want to encourage you all. Keep doing what you're doing. It's the fact that you all are in PT school and doing this is beyond me. I don't see how y'all find the time to do it. But it's really cool. Just your all's tone of voice, your conversational inquisitiveness, I'll throw that word out, is really cool. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. For me, SeniorRehabProject.com is where you can find all the social media stuff and podcasts and whatnot. And if you are interested in working with older adults, or you do already as a therapist, check it out. I definitely speak to the clinician. So if it's a general public individual that is listening to this podcast, you may or may not enjoy my show. But if you're in the rehab world, I think you could potentially get some value from the ramblings on there. So,
hey, Dustin, I think you have an excellent message, whether for the younger viewer or for the older viewer. And you said it best when we asked you that final question. You said, health and wellness means to you that it means it opens up so many more avenues, the things you can do with your life. I feel like if you continue to preach that message and you help people maintain that positive attitude and that outlook as you grow older as well, we're probably looking at another Jack LaLanne for like our generation. All right. Keep doing it because it's inspiring and it helps us keep learning as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Thank you again for being on, Dustin. For anyone interested in finding out more, please listen to our podcast. That's Two Nobodies Talking Podcast, now available on iTunes. You can check us out on our website, twonobodies.com, spelled TWOKNOWBODIES.com, and also on Facebook at Two Nobodies, or on Twitter at Two Nobodies Talking. So thanks again for listening. This has been another great podcast. Thank you, Dustin, for being on the show. And until next time, we are the Nobodies, promoting a healthier, more educated society. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.